Hello. Welcome back to the Language of Emotions and the Art of Healing. I am in Taos, New Mexico. I decided to take myself on a hike this afternoon, and so I am right by the Rio Grande River on the La Vista Verde Trail, which is a pretty easy hike. It's pretty flat, but some really gorgeous views, as you can see behind me. And I climbed down the trail so I could see the water, and climbed back up, and um, decided to do my video here. It looks like it's gonna rain in a little bit, but I'm not too far from my car in case I have to escape. I also have my rain jacket, so I'm pretty prepared. Yeah, so I have thought about a few things to talk about. Something that's been on my mind recently is, well, relationships. Um, and I have a number of really good friends who struggle with relationships as well. I mean, everybody does, but when you come from a background where, as a young girl, part of the conditioning is to like mother your father or also act as a surrogate wife. I know that sounds, it's a very extreme thing, but that was the scenario for me, emotionally, and just and uh, in different ways I played that role for my father, and it led to a lot of difficulty in having my own sense of self outside of that caretaking model, the caretaking mode that I was put into, that role that I played, in order to be there for my father. And, so basically, I had to parent, not only parent my father, but also be there as as an emotional support, um, and to put my attention on him in order to be safe, in order to be loved, in order to get the attention I needed to survive um, a really tragic situation. And so I think this can happen in varying degrees with young girls and their fathers. For me, it was a very extreme scenario because I was also being sexually abused by my father, and at times, he would treat me as if I was his lover, and other times he was very violent, and I was no longer someone who even had feelings. I was just an object where he was taking out his rage and his anger and his trauma from his childhood. And so, and it's a very difficult thing to talk about. There's people hiking behind me, so I just was a bit distracted for a minute. So it's a very difficult thing to talk about, but as an adult, I've seen, over the years, the ways that I've compromised and sacrificed myself in order to, to caretake and to be there in a relationship. And I've seen my friends also choose partners where they have to carry some kind of burden, and where they're, where their partner is more like a child in some ways, like a little boy, and they're, you know, caring for them, supporting them in different ways, while still taking on so much responsibility in their own lives. And the same for me. I needed. There was a part of me that felt that I needed to play that role in order to get my needs, its certain needs met, and to get attention. And a lot of times that attention was not good attention. A lot of times it was attention that was hurtful, or degrading in some way, or just demeaning, and but and there were other aspects that were where we had a mutual sort of connection that seemed positive. But for the most part, I put that relationship first. I put that person first over my own needs, and that was how I was conditioned as a little girl to do with my father. My father did not put energy into me, into helping me to see myself as a strong and dynamic person. He didn't help me to connect to myself and to help me to develop my own sense of self and my own interests, and to nurture who I was. Instead, he took from me emotionally, and he was so hurt and wounded himself that as a child I saw that, I picked up on that, and I saw where that the safest place that I could meet him was to try to be there for him emotionally, to try to soothe and comfort him on some level, even though I was just a child. And so when he was hurtful, or when he was abusive, I I had to sort of stuff those feelings down, and just hope that at some point he would be he could see me again in a light that where I felt special, and I felt more visible. And so I think that these dynamics, these early dynamics that are sort of set in motion with our parents, really play a role in the types of people that we choose in relationships. And it's one of those things where over the last 10 years I've been kind of like unraveling a lot of those emotional ties and emotional bonds that were sort of all wound up in and confused in this dynamic with my father. And it was hard to see who I was, because it was so wrapped up in that relationship with him. And so my sense of self, my sense of identity was all, like I said, tied up with him, with that caretaking role. And it came out in various ways in my life and in my career, in my in different relationships. And over the last few years, I've really feel like I've freed myself from those ties, and now I can I have a stronger sense of who I am, separate from that dynamic. I've spent a lot of time nurturing myself, and really taking time to do self-care practices that help me to just to connect with myself, to begin to really see myself and feel myself outside of a relationship, that I am, as an individual, separate, and complete and whole in myself. And the more that I cared for myself, and built trust with others in ways that were more were just healthier and less dysfunctional, less codependent. I developed more trust and more confidence in just being myself, and not compromising myself in order to be with somebody. And so, like I said, with my friends, I think that sometimes it feels more familiar, it feels safer to be in a role where we're taking on responsibility and supporting the person that we're with in ways where we know that we can get our needs met in other ways. And so there's this sort of compromise that happens, and maybe we don't even really recognize it right away, or it doesn't really affect us or bother us too much, but on some level, on some deeper level, we're not fully honoring ourselves and our our true self, and we are adding some burden to our lives by you know by staying with someone who is actually not really uplifting or giving us energy, but sort of feeding off of our energy, or taking energy away from us. But it feels so familiar to be in that mode where we're depleted and we're overextending ourselves, that it's hard to perceive it, it's hard to see it happening. For me, I have to just really be mindful and be aware of when I might be putting others first, or compromising myself, and I have to really listen, to my feelings and what they're telling me, you know, and sometimes it's a little unclear, and sometimes it takes, like, just being in a situation and not really, because when you come from a lot of, chaotic, abusive relationships, and you enter into healthier relationships, the good things can also be a bit scary and new, and it's hard to know, like, exactly if it's right, or you know if I'm getting triggered by something, is that really that person triggering me, or is it just because I still have fear, or because it's because, yeah, there's vulnerability in being with someone who actually is really present and giving, and accepting and loving. And so we have to sort of find the balance. I think those of us who've come from very extreme situations with our fathers, it's a real journey to be able to discern relationships where we're being met, fully, and where it's more of a shared experience, in the sense of collaboration and teamwork, as opposed to us, even on a subconscious level, sort of compartmentalizing and sacrificing parts of ourselves just to get that, just so that we can get that connection and that relationship. And so it's just an ongoing process, I think, and in the way that I've been handling it in my life is just to always try to keep myself, the little kid parts of myself that might be triggered, or feel unsafe, to really keep putting attention, giving attention to those parts, and reminding them that they're safe and we're no longer in a threatening situation, and that she's completely loved and accepted for who she is. And the more that those kid parts of ourselves feel safe and feel supported and feel nurtured, and that they don't need their father, they don't need to be in that dynamic where they had to compromise themselves so much, and they had to be, to experience so much neglect and pain in order to get love.